To get started, we're going to look at how to actually navigate through your camera. For this example, I'll be using the Canon 250D, which is a good starting point for anybody looking to get into filmmaking. So firstly, an overview of the camera itself. If we look at the front of the camera, then there is only one button. This button simply allows you to remove and change lenses. All you need to do is press it and twist off your lens. When you have removed the lens, you will see that there are some markings on the actual camera body itself. These are guidelines to show you which lenses are compatible on that camera. On the 250D, you can see a red dot with a white square. Remember in the Getting Started section where we talked about lenses and different lens compatibility? These markings help with that. So the red dot means that the camera is compatible with EF lenses, whereas the white square means it's compatible with EFS lenses as well. Whereas on the 1DX2 there is only one red circle, meaning that only EF mount lenses will work. Now onto the right side of the camera there are two ports, a HDMI port which will allow you to view images on a bigger screen via HDMI cable, and a USB port which is great for either uploading these images onto your PC if you don't have an SD card reader or for upgrading the camera's firmware. The left side of the camera has another two ports, one for mic input, so for example the Rode Video Mic Go, and one for a remote cord, for example if you wanted to attach a remote shutter. On the top of the camera you have your shutter button, which will either show you your exposure and find your focus when half pressed. Fully pressing the button will take your photo. You also have the on-off video switch which allows you to turn your camera off, on to video mode or to picture mode. Finally, you have your mode selection dial. This is mostly for photography, so each mode puts your camera into different settings which are perfect for that mode. For example, the AV mode is aperture priority, which changes your camera to get a higher depth of field or background blur. Don't worry about that too much for now, as you should always shoot in manual, or M when making videos. You also have an ISO button for changing your ISO settings, which works with the dial slightly above it, and a display button which I currently don't have linked up to anything. Now onto the back of the camera. Firstly, we need to turn the camera on. Now you can see that there's a ton of information on the screen, but we will cover that shortly. On the back of the camera you have a few buttons. The first one is the menu button, which brings up the camera's settings. Next is the info button. So when you're in live view, you would press this button and it will add or remove elements to the screen. So pressing it once brings up resolution, image stabilization, white balance settings, etc. And pressing it again brings up a histogram which helps you see how under or overexposed your image is. The camera and the record button will start or stop video shooting. AV changes the dial on top to select either shutter speed if it's not held down or aperture if it is held down. The magnifier button lets you zoom into your images when you are viewing them. The star button doesn't have a use right now. The play button lets you view your recorded images, and the bin icon is how you delete images. Now let's jump into the camera's menu. So when you click the menu button, these menus appear. The red menu and the first page lets you see resolution, which you can click in to change. This also shows you whether you're in full HD or 4K shooting, and also the frame rates. You'll also see standard or light. Standard is full resolution, which gives a slightly bigger file size, and light is for more quick editing, so compress data with smaller files. Personally, I would always say keep this on standard. Sound recording should always be on auto unless you have a specific mic plugged in and you are dialing in specific settings. Digital IS is your digital image stabilization, so always leave this enabled. Lens aberration control will reduce the amount of color spill in your images, so keep this set to on. Moving across is time-lapse mode. Move across again and you'll be able to see your ISO speed settings, auto light optimization, highlight tone priority and metering timer. I'd say just leave these as they are, to be honest. Move across again and you get white balance, which lets you change the warmth of your image, but there is a complete video on that, so watch that for more detail. There is also picture style, but again I've made a full detailed video on this, so make sure you watch that for more detail on picture styles. And HDMI info display, which allows you to customize what you can see when you're plugged in via HDMI. Menu number 5 is your autofocus, so you can choose here whether you want to use face and tracking AF or 1 point, which keeps a certain area in focus. You can also enable servo AF, which means the camera focuses on the subject continuously even when you're not pressing the shutter button halfway. I'd recommend keeping this on. Lens electronic AF settings and manual focus peaking too. The blue menu is all about playback. So here you can add creative filters, protect images, crop, resize, etc. I would just leave this as it is, as it focuses more on photography rather than video. Next we have the purple section, which is connection settings. So this allows you to connect your phone and transfer images or videos that way using the Canon app. I rarely use this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here. And again, it's pretty much photography based, as it would take ages to transfer a 4K file from a camera to a phone using Wi-Fi. The yellow section allows you to do things like auto-rotate images or put them into specific folders within your SD card. The only option I really use here is Format Card, which clears the entire card. I always do this before a shoot to make sure I can maximise space, but remember to always make sure that you've already transferred any files onto your PC before formatting it, as it will wipe all of the data from the SD card. Next menu across gives us Auto Power Off. I usually set this for about 10 minutes, as it can be annoying when your camera turns off after 2 minutes of inactivity. You also have Brightness, which I'd leave in the middle, as it changes the brightness of the screen and therefore any images that you see on the screen, so you may wrongly expose footage if the screen is too bright, as it literally is just the display and not the raw file. So a bright display will make your footage look brighter on the screen, but then it may look totally different when you put it onto a PC. Next we have the video system. So as we mentioned earlier in the camera guide video, keep this set to PAL if you're in the UK. Touch control is for the touch screen on the camera. Beep lets you turn on or off the camera beep when using the touch screen. Battery info gives you some information on your battery, such as the battery cap and recharge performance. Sensor cleaning is here too. Now I always have this set to enable auto cleaning, so when I switch the camera off, the sensor will vibrate and remove any loose dust particles that may be on it. But you can always do an ad hoc clean from here just by clicking Clean Now. Moving across again, and you can select which grid you want to be displayed on screen when you are shooting. Shutter button function allows you to customize what happens when you half press or full press the shutter in video mode. The switch button allows you to customize the two buttons on the top right of the back of the camera. HDMI resolution and HDMI HDR output allow you to change resolution and display of an external HDMI display. Moving across again, and you'll get all of the custom functions which allow you to fine-tune some of the settings. I don't really use this. Clear settings will clear all of the camera settings. Copyright info gives you some of Canon's information. Manual URL gives you the URL to Canon's user guide, and logo display will show you some more information on Canon. The teal menu allows you to customize your shooting screen, so whether this be the default Canon screen or a more user-friendly version. Menu display can be guided or standard, so guided will give you tips on how to use each menu section. Mode guide shows you more detailed information on each function, such as aperture priority, and then the feature guide gives you more on the details menu. The green menu is your custom menu, so here you can customize bits from all of the previous menus to appear in one menu itself. This is really useful if you wanted to change settings from various menus quickly. I've had mine set up to change picture style, resolution and frame rates, video system, white balance, autofocus and auto recording. So that's just a whistle-stop tour of the 250D, and all of Canon's menus are quite similar, so if you have a different Canon camera it probably will have the same menu, give or take a few small bits, like the 1DX for example, which has a complete autofocus menu. So for now, keep filming, and if you have any questions please feel free to reach out.